All right, good morning, everybody. Today, I don't know what today's daf is. I don't even want to tell you guys, but we'll get there. Last week we did the same thing. We made it up when we got to the day's daf, and then we fell behind two blot again. So we left off on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. We started a new Mishnah describing a person who's makdish his nesachim, or not only his nesachim, but his nechasim, right? And those items, what happens to them? Does it go to Bedek Habayis? Does it machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Yeshua? Does it go? Are the animals offered? Can they be offered? Are they sold? And then the money, where does the money go to? So we're going to get into that today. So we left off the two dots smack in the middle of Yud Beis Amud Aleph, by the two dots of Taman Tanina. So Taman Tanina, we learned over there. Yesh b'kadshe Bedek Habayis. There's certain qualities by Bedek Habayis. Shestam hekdesh is Bedek Habayis. Person stam, he's makdish his bechasim, goes to Bedek Habayis. It goes for the payment of the upkeep of the temple, the mikdash. Hekdesh Bedek Habayis chalal kol. Also, something which perhaps has kedusha. The kedusha Bedek Habayis can be chal on that. We'll see that rule. Umualin b'gedulehen, and there is meila by those things that grow from them, right? They're gedula, but in other words, those things that, let's say, animals that are born from them, right? And therefore there is meila. If one goes ahead and gets hana from them, you can chayiv meila. Ve'ein behem hana lekohanim, and there is nothing in it for the kohanim, right? The kohanim have no hana in it. Obviously, when you offer karbanos, right, there are parts that go to the kohanim. However, Bedek Habayis, it goes straight to the upkeep of the temple. And Amar Rabbi Chananya, Rabbi Eliezer, this sounds like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer of our Mishnah. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, our Mishnah, he had a machlokas with Rabbi Yeshua, just looking back at it. So he held, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that when a person is makdish his possessions, we'll soon see what the exact case is, machlokas, some other cases, but there's male animals that are offerable and female are offerable. So you sell them to people who need the male animals, sell the females to who need the female animals, and the money, the proceeds, go to Bedek Habayis. All right. The Tanina we learn in our Mishnah, Hamakdish Nechasav. What person is Makdish Nechasav? Ha'isab had behema ruyal go mizbeach, and amongst them are animals that are fit for the mizbeach, Zachar and Chevos, including male and female animals. So the male animals are offered to people who need to offer male animals. Let's say they're obligated to bring an olah, so they'll buy these animals for their olah, and the people will buy these female animals in order for their shlamim. And then the money, the proceeds that the hekdesh raises from selling those animals go for the upkeep of the mikdash. And Rabbi Yochanan, Tam Rabbi Eliezer, what's the reason for Rabbi Eliezer? It says v'ish ki yakdish as beso kodesh laHashem. A person is makdish his house kodesh laHashem. So what's the case where he's makdish his house in kodesh? So if we're talking about mamish his house, the pasuk already says via makdish yigal's beso. The person who's makdish his house redeems his house. So obviously he's not redeeming his physical house, right? His physical residence. Rather, his house means all of his possessions, and it says of there kodesh laHashem, it all goes to Hashem. So mikach sam hekdeshos lebedek habayis. From here we see that sam hekdeshos go to Bedek Habayis because kodesh completely laHashem, because Bedek Habayis, as we mentioned, is only to Hashem. There is no part for the kohanim in that. And Amar Rabbi Zeir, now we have machlos bin Rabbi Zeira. So he holds the first opinion of this machlokas is between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is Amar Rabbi Zeira, Rav Chuna b'shem Rav. What's the machlokas between him? The makdish nechasav. He's just makdish all of his possessions, right? His furniture, his animals. About makdish edro, but he's just makdish his animals. Kol ama ma'idiyah shulim mizbeach. Now, just to go back, we already discussed the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua says the actual animals can be offered as karbanos. Like, for instance, the males can be offered as olos, right? So, according to when the person is makdish his property, right? Rabbi Yeshua says they can be offered. It doesn't go to the Bedek Habayis. They're offered as karbanos, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, it goes to Bedek Habayis. So, what's this machlokas in? So, this machlokas, according to Rabbi Zeira, Rav Chuna b'shem Rav, says only when he's makdish all of his property, everything included, furniture and animals and everything. But if he's just makdish his edro, his flock, then everyone agrees. In other words, not only Rabbi Yeshua says the animals offered, but even Rabbi Eliezer would say, no, it doesn't go to Beit Habayis because he just did flock. Why didn't he do his furniture? Because his furniture can't be offered in the Mizbeach. So that which he makdish his animals was for the purpose of the Mizbeach. And Rabbi Ba, Rav Chuna b'Shem Rav, Maplig, he says, no, the makdish edro. Rabbi Ba says, no. What are the arguments? Only the machlokas is when he's makdish only his flock. Even then, Rabbi Eliezer says it goes to Beit Habayis. Rabbi Shua says it gets offered in the Mizbeach. Of a makdish nechasa, but he's makdish all of his possessions, including his furniture and his cars or whatever it is. Kolama Madia Shula Beit Habayis. Everyone agrees that it goes to the Beit Habayis because he's not just animals, right? Why is he makdish his furniture? It must be because his furniture is going to be sold and the money is going to be used for the upkeep of the temple. So to his animals will be sold and the purpose is used for the upkeep of the temple. And al daite the Rabbi Zera nicha. According to Rabbi Zera, it makes sense. V'kasha al Rabbi Ba. Why? Behema lo misbeachi. According to the first opinion, it makes sense. But why would Rabbi Ba says a person's makdish is animals, right? How does it make sense? Aren't the purpose of animals for the purpose of offering? Why was he makdish just his flock? Isn't it obvious that it was just for the person that was beach? So Gemara says, behema lo misbeachi. Yes, behema really is for the mizbeach. Why did he say he didn't mention anything, right? In other words, the reason why he didn't say it was for karbanos is because he wanted it for the Beit Habayis. So even though he's makdish only his animals, but he didn't say I'm makdish my animals, for the mizbeach. Rather, he just said I'm makdish my animals. So therefore, in such a case, we'll say it goes to Beit Habayis. And Rabbi Yochanan says lo ishnaya. There's no difference in a case of whether he's makdish all of his property, i.e. furniture and animals, or just animals, right? So there's whether he's makdish all of his possessions or just his flock, then he hamachlokes. That is, the machlokes is in both cases. There is no case where they agree. Every case, Rabbi Lezer says that all the animals go to Beit Habayis, and Rabbi Shua says the animals always go as karbanos. Fine. Rav Chuna b'Shem Rav, Rabbi Yavo b'Shem Rav Yochanan, Kodshei Beit Habayis, Shepaydin Timimim Yatzu L'chum. A case of Kodshei Beit Habayis when they were redeemed, right? Now, these animals, he's makdish his animals. Okay. Now, normally, when the mikdash is animals and they can't be offered, they have to wait till they develop a mum, right? A blemish. Now they're no longer offerable. But over here, we're talking about selling to people for them to use it for their karbanos, right? So obviously you can't wait for it to develop a mum, because if it develops a mum, then they can't use it for their karbanos. So we're talking about a case of shapoidin tamimin, right? They're redeeming him, i.e. they're selling them, right? So the kedusha of the animal now switches with the money. The money comes to the Beit Habayis, and the animal goes to the owner. So they're talking about the animals at tamimin. So it's a special rule over here that yatzu l'chulin. These animals are going to chulin, because remember, I can't be makdish something that already has kedusha for another kedusha, right? If it has kedusha's Beit Habayis, right, I can't say this animal is now an olah. It must be that once the people buy the animal, it's like the animal is chulin, and then they make it their olah, right? So kasher Beit Habayis, it's meaning yatzu l'chulin. And Masizam it says, oh, well, our Mishnah seems to say it. Vladon v'chalavan muter le'achar pidyonim. So it says they're vlad, right? They're offspring of the animals, and their chalav, and then the milk, or the chalav, right? Not chalav. Their chalav is mutter after they're redeemed. So after they're redeemed, obviously, it's because they're chulin before the person uses it for his purpose. Let's say of an olah. Turn the page. Yud beis on beis on the top. Rav Chizkiah b'Shem Rav Chizkiah says, no. Teams are talking about a case of shapadim tmimim v'humu, right? We're talking about a case of. In that case over there, we're talking about, when they were redeemed as tamimim, right? And only later on, right, once they were under the other person, then they became humu, then they got a blemish, and then that's when they become chul. He says, yeah, Mishnah says it because Vlad and V'chalav Asr Le'achar Pidyonim. Because over there it says that they're Vlad, right, any offspring, and their milk is Asr after the Pidyon. It must be that this is referring to a case once it becomes once it develops a mum. And Rav Chizkiah b'Shem Rabbi Yossi says, no, Kodshei Beit Habayis shepadim tmimim yatzu l'chulin. He says, no, in the case of a Kodshei Beit Habayis, when you redeem him, then it goes to chulin. So, however, Because if you say they don't go to chulin, how could you possibly say that something which has kedushas bedekabayis, all of a sudden you say now it's going to the mizbech? You can't. You can't change the kedusha, right? So if it's kachi bedekabayis, it can't all of a sudden become your olah. So therefore, it must be that it goes to chulin. So the Rambam says no, maybe that's not the case. Why? So Bali Mumen, in a case of, in other words, they were cases when they became a Baal Mum. In other words, they were bought by these people as regular animals, and then they became Bali Mum, and then they had a blemish. Kach Mizbech Halaleyim, right? In that case, you can say that the Kach Mizbech is Chal on them, Leida Mila, right? In other words, for what? Legizel Avoda, in terms of, right, shearing and Avoda. In those cases, it would not, we say that those cases are not permissible, right? However, when it comes to offering it, right, then they could still be, you can still make them olos and shlama. Fine. Hifrish, nekeva, veloso, now completely new case, right? New case, we're, I don't know, 6-7 lines from the top on Yud Beis and Beis. Hifrish, nekeva, veloso, lepisco, leshama. A person sets aside a female animal, right, for an olah, a karban pesach, or an asham. Now, these 3 karbanos can only be brought with a male animal. So he gets it wrong, right? He takes a female animal, right, and he says, okay, this is my karban pesach, right, or my asham, my olah. Oiset temura. You can make a temura. In other words, what is a temura? Temura is a case when you have an animal which has kedusha, it's kedushas haguf. And then you say, okay, the kedusha of this will be upon that. Now they both have kedusha, it doesn't remove it. But such a case only if that has kedusha, right? But if that didn't have kedusha zaguf, then it wouldn't be able to make a temura, wouldn't be able to make another animal kadosh. So according to this, when they say oisa temura, it means the kedusha, even though it's a female animal, is never fit to be your karban pesach, it still has the kedusha, right? But it can't be offered, right? Because you can't offer a female as your asham or ola or karban pesach. That was the first opinion. So all 3, pesach, asham, ola. Shimon Aimer, lasso, oset temura. If is a case we made the female for an ola, then it has a kedusha saguf and it can make a temura. However, the piece for asham, I know it's a temura, but a karban pesach or asham that can't make a temura. That doesn't have kedusha saguf. Shimon ben Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, and another opinion in the name of Rabbi Shimon, this is Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, says no. None of them make a temura, right? Not even the ola, right? None of them make a temura. Now, what's the machlokas here? So let's see. Amar Rabbi Yechanan says Rabbi Yechanan, Talmud Rabbi Shimon. What's the reason Rabbi Shimon shechem matzin in the cave of ba'oif kshera love ola? Why? Because there is a concept of an ola being a female, which can be offered. What is that? A case of a bird. A bird can be offered as an olah, right? And therefore, we find times that a bird, a female bird, can be offered as an olah. So therefore, a female could have kedusha zaguf even by an animal, right? But there is no such thing as a karban pesach, which is a bird, or an asham, which is a bird. So therefore, when an olah can make a temura according to that second opinion, which was Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yechanan, Talmud Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. What's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda? Who was the third opinion? If we find something, right? The Gemara is going to explain. If we find something which is of the same kind, min b'mino, right? That is different from the animal, right? Even though it's, which is different from an animal of one of its own kind. Certainly, right? Kol shekain min shein b'mino. Certainly that if it's 2 different kinds, it won't work. What do you mean? Ezu min b'mino shel chalakalav. What is considered to be a case of, right, the same type of animal, right, which is different, right, from the same type of animal? Kadai tonight, like this. Asham ben shana, v'hevi ben shtaim. There are different times when an asham is required to be in its first year, or sometimes an asham is required to be in its second year. It depends what kind of asham it is, whether asham ilah, asham gazela, different halachas when it comes to an asham. All right. Now, a person was supposed to, let's say, bring an asham in his first year, and he brought one in his second year, or ben shtayim, maybe ben shalosh, ben shana, or if it was one that he was supposed to be in his first year, in his second year, right, and he brought it in his first year, kosher, ella shaloi alu labalim l'shem chayv. It's kosher. However, it doesn't qualify for its owners as a chova, right? In other words, it can be brought, even though it's the wrong year, but it still has kedusha. And on that, Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Kol Asman Kedoshim. There is no kedusha there. So we see over there that even though it's the same type of animal, it's an asham, and it's the right gender, right? It just happens to be the wrong age, according to Rabbi Shimon, right? It's not kadosh. So since it's not kadosh, right? So what do you see from over here? You see, according to this opinion of Rabbi Shimon, that there is no kedusha chal, right? In a case of even if it's the wrong age. Certainly, if it's the wrong gender, right, then the kedusha is not chal. If the kedusha is not chal, it can't make a tamura. So that was the reason, according to the third opinion. And Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shua, Shneim Amar Davar Echad. Rabbi Shimon, right, on the third opinion, and Rabbi Shua both said the same thing. So, comment Rabbi Shua Amar Nekeva Lo Eila Lo Kadsha Ela Hekdesh Damim, right? Just like, right, Rabbi Shua says that a female, right, when he talked about the Rabbi Shua from a Mishnah, when he says a female animal is not brought as shlamim, rather he says in a Mishnah, right, Rabbi Shua says, let me just find it. I'm not sure if the Gemara breaks it down now, but he says over here, Rabbi Shua in our Mishnah says, Olos, right? He says the females should be sold and then bought, right? And then with that, purchase funds for karbanos, right? So we see over here, right, that Rabbi Shua holds that nekeva le'ola lo yikash el hakish damim, and Cain Rabbi Shimon Amir. So the Rabbi Shimon says nekeva le'ola lo yikash el hakish damim. So to over here, Rabbi Shimon says, it only has kedushas dam. It doesn't have kedushas aguf, right? Because ain't taimar kedusha kedushas guf. Because if you say that according to Rabbi Shua it has kedushas haguf, not just kedushas damim, yiru, then the halacha should be you shouldn't just be able to sell the female animals to people who need shlamim and then buy olos. You should have to wait till it grazes and develops a mum. I.e., since you don't have to do it, so therefore it does not have kedushas haguf. It only has kedushas damim. And Amar Rabbi, and Rabbi says over there, Einani roya as divi Rabbi Shimon Pesach, Shemaiser Pesach ba'ashlam. He says, no, I don't agree with Rabbi Shimon. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon, how could you say that if you set aside a female as a Karban Pesach, it has no kedushas aguf and it can't make it tamura? If we find that a Karban Pesach can become a shlamim can be male or female. So therefore, I disagree and I say that there is kedusha there. V'leima Einani roya divi Rabbi Shimon ba'asham. Why does he say the same thing by an asham, right? Shemaiser asham bal ola, because the leftover asham can be brought as an ola. So we see that there is shaykhus between an asham, right, with an ola. So im hektish pesach b'shlamim gufa karev shlamim. When we say leftover pesach becomes a shlamim, so the animal itself is brought as a shlamim. However, hektish asham bal ola. But when you say, right, that when a person took his asham and it comes in ola, and gufa karev ola, it's not an ola, right? In other words, yes, it does have kedusha, but it's not offered. So therefore, since it's not offered, it's not the same level as a Karban Pesach becomes a shlamim as as an asham becoming an ola. So mapligi. So what's the machlokas then? So ahin amar hektish damim hektish, vahin amar hektish gufa hektish. One says that when the case of when he's makdish, it only has kedushas damim. It has kedushas damim that doesn't have a kedushas guf. Then therefore, it wouldn't make a tamura. And the other one says it itself is kadosh, and therefore it can go ahead and create a tamura. And Rabbi Zeira, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, he says, Tamid Rabbi Yeshua. What's the reason according to Rabbi Yeshua? It says, Daber el Aaron vel Bonav vel Kol bnei Yisrael v'Mart Alehem ish b'Yisrael v'chulei asher yakri l'Hashem ola. So over there, he says, remember, in the case of Rabbi Yeshua, if a person is makdish male and female animals. Males offers olos, females sell them to people who need shlamim and use that money to buy olos. So why do females become olos, right? So the pasuk says a person is, offers a korban based asher yakir Hashem la'ola, hakol karev ola. Therefore, anything that is consecrated, anything that has kedusha, can be offered as an ola. The Retzainichem Tamim Zachar. Then it says the Retzainichem Tamim Zachar, right? In other words, for you, it should be Tamim and Zachar, right? So what are we there? So we see over there, Menai Lafila. So it says over there, only males become olos. So how do you know Menai Lafila Nekevos? Tamaloimar. Therefore, it says Babakar Larabas is Nekevos. It says the word Bakar to include also females. So, and over there, Rabbi Yitzchak Bey Rabbi Yezer Shal. I understand. Ksiv Zachar Batamar Babakar Larabas is Nekevos. I understand. The pasuk says with Farish, right? It says Zachar. Right? And now you're saying the word bakar, cattle, includes females. It doesn't make sense, right? How could bakar include females? The same thing should be Dikfasek. See, it says over there Tamim, right? It says Tamim and Zachar, Batamar Bakar, L'Rabbas Bali movement. You should say, oh, well, since it says the word Bakar, cattle, right? It should include animals that are blemished. So my benai, what's the difference? Rav Amar, Shifta Kidekah B'Reim. No, in other words, the Shifta, when you weave and there's an obvious separation, so there's an obvious separation to include male and female. They're both kosher karbanos, to include that in Ola, as saying an animal with whether it has a mum or a blemish could be included. So therefore, it's not a good question. And Rabbi Elazar Omer Yimkru v'chulei Hamin, you should go ahead and sell it for the type of those people that need that type of offering. And Rabbi Avo b'Shem Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Talmud Rabbi Eliezer, what's the called Rabbi Elazar? Says Dabri al Arab al Ashir v'chulei, right? Ashir Kiv Hashem Ola, you offered Hashem Ola, Hakol Karev Ola. Everything is offered as an Ola. It says for your needs, right? Even a tamim, right, or an animal which is tamim, which is without any sort of blemish, a zachar or is male. So yachol afilu ofos. You might think it were even also ophos, birds who can be sold as for olas. So tamalei, right? Therefore it says babakar. It says cattle, velo ophos, only animals and not olos. Rabbi Yirmiyah of Rabbi Boon, Barchia having asking. I mean, so Rabbi Yirmiyah and Rabbi Boon, they were sitting and asking. They said, "Tamana." So he says, "Over there, Amar Rabbi Yechon, Tamar Rabbi Shimon, Shekeni Keva Shabbat Shelav Olam, Vaka Amar Hafi." Right over there, we said that even in a keva, right, a female bird is kosher as an ola, and over here you say no birds are good at all, right? Only cattle, because bakar excludes ophos. So, so which one is it? If he sets aside birds, why shouldn't that be included? If you sell the birds, it can be used for olos. So on that top of the page, Emu Gimel. So Amar Rabbi Yasi Kamesi Kaha. So he says, I said this Kaha Dam Rabbi Shmuel B'Shem Rabbi Zeira. Kol Sheni Yacholi Krai V'Lo Hivla Dema. Anything that can't be offered, right? It or its money, like kachel hektish damim. Then you only have kedushas mamon, right? You only have kedushas damim. Ve'atamar yos, right? And on this, you said lahakriv einati yachol l'ksiv bakar v'lo'ofos. And on this, you can't say it says b'bakar v'lo'ofos. L'ifdois einati yachol she'en lo pidyon, right? Because we know there is no such thing as basically letting a bird develop a movement to redeem it. So therefore you have to say it's therefore it's only has kedushas damim. In other words, in the case of a bird, right? Since it's not talking about a case where you have to go ahead and develop a mum, so therefore the bird itself only has kedushas damim, and therefore you can go ahead and sell it without any sort of movement. And therefore, since you can sell it, doesn't have kedushas damim, so therefore it only has kedushas, not kedushas guf. Therefore, you can go ahead and sell it and buy olos from the proceeds of the sale of the birds. And Chavraya b'Shem Rabbi Yechanan. So we say, and the I guess the bunch of Rabbanim, the Chavraya b'Shem Rabbi Yechanan says, Rabbi Avu Bar Nagri Omar Kumei Rabbi Ilu b'Shem Rabbi Yechanan Tam Dehein Tanina. Right. The reason for this brisa, it says V'im Kol Behema Tameya Asher Lo Yakrivu Mimeno Karban LaHashem. Right? It says for any kol behema tmeya, right? Any basically non-kosher animal, behema tmeya, you should offer it from a karban Hashem. Samatam l'er tmeya. Why say tmeya? Ela afilu tmeya be'oisa Hashem. Even if it's tmeya for that kosher species, i.e., will be like a female to a male. If it's supposed to be a male and it's a female, that is called behema tmeya. Otherwise, I don't need a pasuk. I know you can't offer a horse, right? So therefore, it says behema tmeya for that. So therefore, it sounds like that you wouldn't have to go ahead and offer it. The kasha, according to this, is difficult. But in the same pasuk, we learn over there, over there you should stand up and evaluate it, and basically wait till it develops a mum. So if this is the case over here, where we're talking about it doesn't have any kedusha at all because it's a female and not a male, where it's called a behema tmeya. So, but then according to that, the animal still needs to go ahead and develop a mum, right? So what do you do there? So Rabbi Zeir, Rabbi Shem, Rabbi Eliezer, he says, Ella, rather you talk about the case of V'im Kol Behema Tmeya Asher Lo Yakriv Meno Karban LaHashem. Right? So the pasuk says, for all Behema Tmeya, which was not offered to Karban LaHashem, Kol Sheina Ra'uyo Likarev Lo Yikav Lo B'Makom Acher Eino Yisi Tamura. If it's a case of where it can't be offered at all, right? Not here, not for anything, then it doesn't make a Tamura, right? However, Yatzin Akeva Lo'ila, however, an animal, right? A female animal, right? Is excluded, right? Because in that case, it is fit in other cases, right? It could be offered in makom acher, right? And therefore, so it's not excluded. And alpha pishain the karev kan really the karev makom acher, because a female animal, even though it can't be fit over here as an ola, rather it can be offered in another case. And Rabbi Avon, Rabbi Bun, Bon, Kamei de Rabbi Zera, they asked for Rabbi Zera, Hare Haroi Vanir, Vashen Rui, the Karev Loi Kav Loi Makom Acher, but Hare is a Tmura. Or what do you mean? In a case of an animal that was sodomized, over there, you can't offer it here to count for another case. But over there, right, it can make a Tmura. So then over here, you should say that, so why in this case, that do we say that the female should be any different, right? The female should be, the only reason the female does could be offered in other cases, but even in the case of an animal can't be offered ever, i.e. an animal was sodomized, right? It can't, right? But it can't be offered anywhere, but it makes a Tmura. So your rule doesn't make sense. So Amar Lun, Amar Lun, he says, Af ani lo marti ela tmei mamash, right? I was only talking about Tmeya mamash, right? Basically, no, it wasn't mean Tmeya that an animal with a female animal. Rather, I was talking about a non-kosher animal. And therefore, a non-kosher animal would be the same. Since it can't be offered in any case, it doesn't make a Tmura. Since over there, it can't be offered in any case. So therefore, it would not make a Tmura in this case, right? The I kasha, but this doesn't make sense. But it says over here, right, that this is the pasuk of where you stand up where you learn that you value the animal, wait till it develops a mum, and you don't say that by behemoth tmeya. So it's a kasha. So therefore, the Gemara leaves off in a big question as to the source of what this behemoth tmeya is referring to. If it's referring to specifically a non-kosher animal, then the source of the pasuk doesn't make sense, because we know you don't evaluate those animals. And if it refers to a female, then it's a kasha on the one that says that it does not make a Tmura. Fine. Now the daf gets a little easier. That was a very difficult sugya. Let's go on a small mishnah, and then we start another, actually very geshmaka parak. So let's see. So achas l'shloshim yom mishar salishka. Every 30 days, they used to go ahead and set the price for the lishka. In other words, what price they would sell the flour and the other items for. Kol makabel of the sabek slatas me'arba amdu. All right, so he says amdu mishalosh sabek me'arba. So basically, they would set a price, and let's say people and whoever wants the deal, the contract for the month, come and take it. And so let's say they did use 4 sa for a sella, and then all of a sudden the price went to 3, so it's cheaper. Nevertheless, it's sabek me'arba. They still provide. Or it got more expensive. Nevertheless, they still provide 4 saw, not 3 per seller. And mishalosh, let's say they made a deal on 3, and all of a sudden, but all of a sudden the prices dropped and it got cheaper, and therefore the hektish should get more money. But nevertheless, the hektish gets the new price, the new cheaper price. Shiyad hektish al yana, because wherever you go ahead and you make a deal, the position of hektish is always al yana. And furthermore, another benefit of hektish is the hitlis soilas. If the flour becomes wormy, then he's low. Then becomes wormy according to the seller. He has to provide new good flour that doesn't go bad. Or if the wine goes bad, then the loss is to him. He has to provide other wine. And basically, and he doesn't get his money until the carbon is offered and is good. Then they get their money because Yad Hektish is al Yoina. And Tani, we're going to have Rabbi Shimon, Miyad Hayim Makablas Basayim, Vakonim Zrizim Hen. In other words, they will get their money right away, because once they get it, they offer it right away. There is no lapse in time in terms of having it sit around for it to become vinegar or for it to become wormy, because basically they give them the money and then they offer it immediately. So Hadran Allah, Hadruma. Now we finished the 4th parak. Now we will start, Bez Hashem, the 5th parak. Milestone. Mishnah says, Elu hein hamamunin shay b'mikdash. Right? These are the people who were appointed in the mikdash. And over here, we're discussing. The Gemara will soon say why we list these 50 people. These were 15 people whose jobs were in the mikdash, and it goes through, and the Gemara actually will explain, go through all of them. So Elu hein hamamunin shay b'mikdash. Yochanan ben Pinchas al chasamos. Right? Yochanan ben Pinchas, he was in charge of the chasamos, of the tokens that people would go ahead and purchase the tokens, and others to say that they get a certain animal for their carbon. Or they'll purchase tokens, and then they show them the people with the animals. Hey, I have an Ola token. Give me an Ola. So he was in charge. Yechid ben Pinchas was in charge of the chasamas. Achia al Nesachim, he was in charge of the Nesachim of the wine. Masya ben Shmuel al Paisos, he was in charge of the lots, of the drawing the lots of who would do the avoda. Psachia al Akinin, Psachia was in charge of the money for the bird pairs. And Psachia is Mordechai. Psachia was Mordechai. Psachia, why was it called Psachia? Very big darshan. He would darshan for people. He was a big Talmid Chacham, and he understood everything, and he understood 70 languages. And Ben Achia, Al Chelim Ayin Ben Achia was a master. He understood different stomach ailments and how to cure them. Nechunya Chayfer Shichin, he used to go ahead and dig ditches, I guess, for the purposes of water. And Gvini Karos, he was the crier. He would go ahead and I guess announce when it was time to do certain avodas. And Ben Geber on the Escharim, Ben Geber was in charge of locking the gates. Ben Bavi Mamuna al Apkia, Ben Mamuna, he was in charge of the wicks. Ben Arza al Silzel, Ben Arza was in charge of the symbols of some of the music. And Hurgus Ben Levi al Ashir, and Hurgus Ben Levi, he was in charge of the Shira. Beis Garma al Maisa Lechem, Beis Panim, Beis Garma was in charge of the Maisa Lechem Panim, and Beis Aftinas al Maisa Ketairas. And we saw Beis Aftinas before. He was in charge. Their family was in charge of the Maisa Ketairas, of making the incense, the Ketairas for the Mikdash. And the Elazar al Parochas, Elazar was in charge of the Parochas, the curtains, in terms of when they would fix it. And Pinchas Hamalbish, and Pinchas, he was the wardrobe guy. He was in charge of dressing the Kohanim so they would have the proper attire. Now, why were these listed in the Gemara? So Zak the Gemara, Rabbi Chizkiya, Omar, Rabbi Simon, V'Rabbanan, Chad Omar, Keshirei Dor V'Dor Ba'Limanos. These were, of all the different years, of all the different generations, these were like the top 15 in their positions, right? These were like the number one guys in their positions, and that's why they're naming them. In other words, these people were not contemporaries. The other opinion says, Mishaya Ba'isador, Moana Ba'Ashvador. So no, whoever, the Tana of our Mishnah, he just wrote the 15 of his generation. All right, we'll skip the parentheses. All right, it has to do with the Gemara and Yuma, of mentioning them all, because some of these were mentioned, the bad, in the Gemara, in Mishnah and Yuma, which we'll see Mr. Shem in, within the next month or two. But anyways, so we'll skip the parentheses. It's taken out by the, where's the Aleph, right? The Abe, right. So goes Agra. All right, fine. So skip it, skip the parentheses, as we usually do. Go to the top of Amud Beis. Amar Rabbi Yona says, Rabbi Yona, Ksiv, the Pasuk says, therefore, I will give him a great portion, right? Right? And I will give the spoils to the strong ones. So Zeh Rabbi Kiva is referred to Rabbi Kiva, Shehiskin, Mishnah, Midrash, Halachas, Vagadas. Right? He was the one who basically established the Mishnah, Medrash, Halachas, Haggados. He put it together, even though he didn't, he wasn't, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi put together the Mishnah, but it was for him with all the students, the Talmidim who died, and he rebuilt the Torah. So all the credit, or a lot of the credit, is Rabbi Kiva, who was the one who was Hiskin, Mishnah, Medrash, Halachas, Vagadas. Some say Elach because it's a Gedolah Tikna. Some say it's actually a Gedolah who are Masakinis, Ella Matik and Zem. What did Rabbi Kiva do? Klalos Pratos. He dashed different Klalos Pratos so they were not lost from Klal Yisrael. And Omar, Rabbi Avo, Ksiv, it says Mishpachos Seifrim Yesh V'Yavitz. It says over there that it calls them it calls the families of the Seifrim, right? The Yesh V'Yavitz. Matam Alim Seifrim, why are they called Sofrim? Elishas the Torah first. They would make the Torah into lists, right? And make a Torah list so they're easier to remember. Right, Chamish Yisrael and Truma. There are 5 types of people who don't take, who shouldn't take Truma. Chamish Devarim Chayiv Mechala. There are 5 types of grains that are Chayiv Mechala. Chamish Yisrael Nashim. There's Sarasayim. There are 15 women who pater their tsaros when they're married to their co-wives. They don't have to do Yibum. There are Shloishim V'Sheish Krisis B'Torah. There's 36 kares in the Torah. Shloish Yisrael Davar Nemno B'Nevilas Oif Atar. There are 13 rules that were said by the nevela, by the carcass of a kosher bird. Arba Avos Nezikin, there are 4 categories of damages, and Avos Malachas, Arba Chasrachas. When it comes to Shabbos, it's 39 Malachas. So you see, that was made into lists in order to make things, in order to organize things and to make them easier to remember. That's why they were called Mishpachos Seifrim. And Amar Rabbi Yachak, see the pasuk says Ezra HaKoyin Sefer. Ezra HaKoyin was a Sefer. Matam Leimer Sefer. Why was he called Sefer? Ela Kashem Shaya Sefer. Divrei Torah Just like he counted, right? The words of the Torah, so to the Divrei Chacham are also counted. They're also very meticulous in terms of listing the words of the Divrei Chacham. And Rabbi Chagai, B'Shem Shmuel Bar Nachman, Harishayim Charshu V'Zaru, Dikshu Kischu Adru Katsru Imru Dashu Zaru B'Daru Tachanu Yerkivu Lashu Kitvu V'Afu. Right. The first generation, basically, they did everything from A to Z, like when you make bread, right? You plow, then you plant, then you weed, then you work the land, then you harvest it, then you gather it, then you put it in a pile, then you throw it in the air, then you separate it, then you have now the flour, right? And then you grind it, right? And then you bake it, right? You knead it. So they did everything. And still us, we have nothing to eat, right? We don't even understand it. Now, they did so much to prepare make it easy for us, and nevertheless, it is still very difficult for us. And Rabbi Abba, Barazmina B'Shem Rabbi Zira, says, if they were considered malachim, they were like angels, were mere man. And if they're considered to be people, anu chamar, we are donkeys. And they say that when that was said, even we were not even like the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair. What was that? So we'll leave off with this Geshmaka story of the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair. What did he do? What happened? So Gravte leads to Belayla. One time that he was stolen a night of the Tamiras Gavon Tlasin Yamin, so the robbers, they stole him, they took him for 3 days, and the donkey wasn't eating anything. He wouldn't eat anything even for 3 days. So after 3 days, they said, we got to get rid of this animal. What's going to happen? They said, Amri, right? Let's get rid of it, because if this animal's not eating, he's going to die, right? People are going to smell him, then we're going to get caught. So let's return him, right? As Afkino, they let it free. So the donkey went back on its own to the house of Pinchas ben Yair, and Sharias Menhanekas, and it was basically, it was making noise, right? It was braying in order to get the attention. Samalu, he said to Pinchas ben Yair, he says, Paschal lahada avusa, right? I'm sure this animal didn't eat because he wouldn't eat stolen grains or whatever. I'm sure, these people weren't good. Bring him in, this unfortunate animal, because he hasn't probably eaten anything in 3 days. So possibly so they opened it up, and it came in. So he said to them, right? Give him something to eat. Right? They gave him barley, but he didn't want to eat. So he told the Pinchas ben Yair, he says, the animal, your donkey doesn't want to eat anything. Right? Did you go ahead and sift it? Did you make it good? He said, yeah, for sure. Obviously, we made it good and ready for the animal to eat, for your donkey to eat. Did you go ahead and take demai from it? Right? Now, if it was purchased from Amiratzim, you have to go ahead and take demai normally in food for people. However, they said, didn't you teach us, right? If you buy food, right, for an animal, or flour for hides, for organ hides, or oil for a lamp, you don't have to take demai. Demai is only for the purpose of human consumption. So obviously, we're putter from taking demai because it's going to this donkey. Some alone, he said to them, right? What can we do with this animal? Right, this sad animal, the right? She's very machmer on himself. The donkey is very machmer not to even eat food fit for an animal, which is not taken by. So then he took demai from the animal, from the barley there, and then the donkey finally ate that because he was machbid on not eating demai, make sure it was separated. So we'll stop here with the story. Tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, we will continue with the Gemara, catching up 7:15 tomorrow, Mirz Hashem. Everyone have a wonderful day. Those that are traveling, have a safe travels. Shkoyach.